Hello and welcome to Vantage This Week, a show where we recap the highlights of the week gone by. Will Sheikh Hasina be extradited? That's the big question this week as cases continue to pile up against Hasina. Bangladesh wants her to return and stand trial. In India, anger is mounting. Last week, a 31-year-old doctor was brutally raped and murdered at a medical college in Kolkata. Doctors and women's groups have taken to the streets while politicians turn the tragedy into a spectacle. Ukraine's incursion into Russia is gaining momentum. Kiev claims it has set up a military office inside Russian territory in the Kursk region. We'll bring you the details. Meanwhile, Google faces an uncertain future. The US government wants to break it up, calling the $2 trillion company a monopoly. If it happens, it will be unprecedented. Speaking of unprecedented, scientists have found an underground reservoir on Mars. It has enough water to make up a whole ocean that covers the entirety of the planet. All this and more lined up for you. Let's get started. It's exactly what we feared. Bangladesh wants Sheikh Hasina to return, not to bury old differences, but to stand trial, to answer for her alleged crimes. And who's saying this? The new interim foreign minister of Bangladesh. He says a number of cases have been filed against Sheikh Hasina, so Dhaka will have to demand her return. Basically, they want to extradite Sheikh Hasina. Just one problem though, Hasina is still in New Delhi. Her son says that she is not seeking asylum anywhere. So if an official extradition request is made, the ball will be in India's court. And the foreign minister knows this. Listen to his statement. I'm quoting, "That creates an embarrassing situation for the Indian government. New Delhi knows this and I'm sure they will take care of it." Not exactly a positive statement. If you know it will embarrass India, why do it at all? Why not let it slide? Perhaps because of the domestic sentiment. The public in Bangladesh is demanding justice. More than 400 people were killed in the anti-hasina protests. Their families blame the ousted Prime Minister for their deaths. At least 3 cases have been filed against her, and one of them is a murder case. 3 of her ministers are already in jail. They were arrested while trying to flee the country. Plus, Sheikh Hasina remains a volatile player. Consider what happened this week. Hasina released her first public statement. She asked her supporters to rally on the 15th of August. It's a national mourning day in Bangladesh. It marks the death anniversary of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, the country's founder and Sheikh Hasina's father. And what happened on that day, 15th August? More violence. Hasina's supporters did gather to mourn Mujib, but they were attacked by other political parties. So the interim regime's logic is quite clear. If Hasina is at large, she can influence Bangladesh politics, which is why they may look to extradite her. Which brings us to India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to Mohammad Yunus today. He voiced support for a stable and democratic Bangladesh. It was their first conversation since Yunus took charge. And what about extradition? India's foreign ministry was asked about this. The spokesperson called it a hypothetical situation. Listen in.
आपने जो बात किया एक्सट्रेडिशन का, तो ये तो बड़ा एक हाइपोथेटिकल सा सवाल है ना? तो इस पे हम लोग की हमारा ये कहना हुआ कि इट इज़ नॉट अ प्रैक्टिस टू आंसर हाइपोथेटिकल क्वेश्चंस.
It's clearly a tricky question. So let's understand what is at stake. The technicalities first. India and Bangladesh do have an extradition treaty, so a convict or an under trial can be sent across the border. We have the laws in place. But we have some exceptions. Say the convict is seeking asylum in India or she's considered a political prisoner, then extradition rules do not apply. You may think Sheikh Hasina fits that bill, but the fact is we don't know yet. The Indian government has not revealed her status. She could be a guest or a refugee or an asylum seeker. As of now, it is unclear. But frankly, this is not about the technicality. This will be a political call. India has 3 factors to consider. Number 1, you can't be seen as dumping a friend. India's relationship with Sheikh Hasina goes back decades. New Delhi gave her refuge in 1975. She stayed here after soldiers killed her family. You can't just flush that history down the drain. Plus, Sheikh Hasina faces serious charges. Murder is punishable by death in Bangladesh, and Hasina is accused of murder, so her freedom and life hangs in the balance. That's the first thing to consider. Factor number 2, resetting ties. India has a new strategic goal in Dhaka: retain as much influence as possible and fend off Chinese or Pakistani designs. To do that, you need the new power brokers in your corner. If not, India may lose strategic space. Which brings us to the final factor, the impact on minorities. Prime Minister Modi spoke about this yesterday in his Independence Day speech. The status of Hindus is a big concern for India. Many of them have already been targeted. If India refuses to extradite Hasina, the attacks may intensify. Mobs may channel their anger at Hindus. So these are the 3 factors at play. I know it sounds like a tough situation. It is, but there is also a way out. And that is quiet diplomacy. Stop Dhaka from publicly talking about extradition or indeed filing a request. Also try to stop Hasina from releasing these statements. They don't help her or India. After that, it's a waiting game. Initial reports said that Hasina was looking for asylum in the UK or in Finland. If those moves succeed, problem solved. Once Hasina leaves Indian soil, it is not New Delhi's concern. Of course, all of this is easier said than done. It will take a lot of diplomatic maneuvering. And don't forget the optics. Hasina may be gone, but India is still the senior partner in this relationship, so New Delhi cannot be seen as being pushed around. It will be a tough tightrope walk for the Indian leadership. We'll be tracking all the updates for you.
Justice! Justice! Justice!
The protests continue in India. Doctors are holding candlelight vigils, women's groups are marching on the streets, and our politicians doing what they do best, turning a tragedy into a spectacle. We'll come to that in a bit. But first, the latest updates. Protests began after the horrific incident in Kolkata last week. A 31-year-old doctor was raped and murdered, that too at her medical college. Since then, doctors have been protesting across India. They're demanding justice and safety. Tomorrow, they will be striking work. India's largest doctors' body has announced a strike. That's the IMA, the Indian Medical Association. Now, the IMA has around 400,000 doctors. So expect a nationwide strike. All non-essential services will be halted from Saturday morning to Sunday morning. And so far, the pressure has been relentless, both from doctors and women's groups. They have been marching and protesting across major cities, and today was no different. Take a look.
This is not what we studied for. हमने entrance exam crack कर रहे हैं ये protest करने के लिए नहीं. We're very happy working at our hospitals. Please give us the safety so we can go work at our hospitals.
Justice! Justice! Justice to ladies! Justice denied! We want justice!
Some of these protests did not go well. We told you about that yesterday. Goons vandalized the college where this crime happened in Kolkata. They attacked doctors and destroyed the emergency room. Kolkata police are hunting them down. So far, 25 people have been arrested. And what about the murder investigation? Well, the CBI is handling that. The Central Bureau of Investigation. And they have many leads to follow. The victim's family says her colleagues may have been involved. Some interns and doctors at the college may have been involved. I'm sure the CBI will follow that up. In fact, they have already summoned 5 doctors for questioning. Which brings us to the politics. Today, West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee organized a march. She herself walked at the front of it. And what did she want? death penalty by next Sunday. Basically 1 week to probe, prosecute and convict. Now don't get us wrong, all of us want swift justice for that young woman. But let's not ignore the reality. No court can deliver such quick justice, not even fast-track courts. So this is not about getting justice, this is about getting political mileage. And the other side is doing it too. Whether it's spreading fake news about the incident or blaming people without evidence, such selfish moves do not help anyone. They only make a bad situation worse, and this is a very bad situation. Just think about it. A young doctor was raped and murdered inside a hospital. If a doctor is not safe inside a hospital, where are they safe? If a doctor is not safe in a hospital, who is safe? Just look at this report. Around 75% Indian doctors have faced some sort of violence at work. That's 3 out of 4 doctors. How can we prevent this? The central government has issued a new directive. It puts the onus on the hospital head. Imagine you run a government hospital in India, a doctor has been attacked on your watch. Then you must file an FIR within 6 hours. The responsibility is not on the doctor who was attacked. It's not on the bystanders. The responsibility lies with the hospital head. It is a good move because right now a lot of attacks go unreported. So this new directive should help, but it's not enough. You can't just focus on redressal here. You must focus on prevention too. How can we stop these attacks in the first place? The doctors already have an idea. They've been demanding a Central Protection Act. It was first drafted in 2019. It mandates strict punishment for assaulting doctors, up to 10 years in jail, plus up to 10 lakh rupees fine. The idea was to deter attackers with strict punishment. But the government did not pursue it. They said a separate law for doctors was unnecessary. But now that bill is back in focus, the Indian Medical Association is pushing for it again. They say a hospital should be as safe as an airport, and we have to agree. One law alone may not solve the entire problem, but it's a start. We can't just protest, politicize, and procrastinate. We must be proactive. Safety at the workplace must be non-negotiable. Our lead story tonight is about Google. Will Google be broken up? The search giant is in the crosshairs of the US government, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Google is worth well over $2 trillion. As of April this year, more than 2 billion people were using Google and its products. The company reaches every continent on this planet. It has more than 70 offices, 70 offices in 50 countries. By the end of 2023, Google had more than 180,000 employees. It is more powerful than governments and richer than many countries. Google has been among America's crown jewels. But now the US government feels that this company is too big to regulate, and they have a point. Wherever there is internet, there is Google. For a lot of people, internet means Google. It is the only search engine they use. But Google's wealth comes from a wide range of products. Search is only a part of it. There is the Chrome browser, there's YouTube for videos, Gmail for email, Google Drive for storage, Google Maps for navigation, and the Android operating systems for smartphones. It's a long list. All these products together make Google worth over $2 trillion. So what happens if the company is broken up? Each of these products, Chrome, YouTube, Google Drive, Gmail, Maps, Android, they may be split from the parent company and siphoned into separate entities. That is one possibility. Business units like Android and the Chrome browser could be divested. Everything else remains as it is. But whatever is decided, Google will be hollowed out. Whichever way this goes, Google will be hollowed out. I know you have questions about this, like why is this happening? Why does the US government want to break up Google? It started with a lawsuit. Google was sued by the US government, by their Justice Department. They said Google is a monopoly and it is using all its power to control the market for search. How? By paying off other internet companies like Apple, the maker of iPhones. Google paid a lot of money to Apple to make sure that Google Search is the default search engine on its devices. So when you use an Apple product, when you pick up your iPhone or your iPad and you open the Safari browser to look for something, all its searches are directed to Google. Similarly, Google paid off Mozilla too. Mozilla makes the Firefox internet browser. So Google targeted Firefox to make sure that all the searches from Firefox came to Google. Now, we don't have the exact figure, but reports say that Google paid billions of dollars to these players. Now, the US Justice Department says that Google violated America's antitrust laws. So they took the matter to court, and the judge agreed. He declared that Google is a monopolist. So it was a win for the US government. Now, the Justice Department wants to use this opportunity to enforce antitrust laws. They want to take action and check Google's monopoly. Of course, the company will fight this in court. And this is what is expected to happen. A judge will finally decide if and how Google will be broken up.
Well, Google is going to appeal, and we don't know how long that's going to take. What we do know is going to happen is there's going to be what's called a remedy phase. That's the next act in this legal showdown, is what's known as a remedy phase, and the first hearing in that is September 6th. But that process is going to take months to happen too. It could take a year just to do that. That's where the judge is going to decide what kind of changes must be imposed to make a more competitive landscape.
At the center of this case are America's antitrust laws. Now, what are antitrust laws? These are laws that regulate how goods and services are sold in the market. They ensure that a balance is maintained, that the market remains fair. For every player who wants to enter a business, the market should be fair. There should be a level playing field. Let's try and understand this through a packet of chips. Imagine this scenario. There's a famous brand of chips that everyone likes. It is available widely. It has a range of flavors. Whenever you go to your local supermarket, you find only this brand of chips. It is on all the shelves. You may not even realize or question this. Why does the supermarket keep only this specific brand of chips? What about the other brands? There's a good chance you won't even think about this. After all, it's just a packet of chips, and you like this brand. So when you want to have chips, you just buy what is available. But here is what you don't know. The maker of these chips struck a deal with the supermarket. They asked the supermarket owner to only sell their brand of chips and to keep the competition away. So they bought all the shelves for chips in the supermarket. In exchange, the supermarket owner gets a slice of the profits. That's how they rigged the market. Now imagine if a new chips brand wants to enter this market. It's a startup that makes healthy chips. They taste the same or even better. And they come without preservatives maybe. But you won't be able to get your hands on this brand, this new brand, because your nearest supermarket won't keep them. After all, they're making money from that secret deal they struck. And this startup, this new company, doesn't have the money to outbid the big company. Such practices are more common than you would imagine. And that is why we need antitrust laws to make sure that everyone gets a fair chance to compete in an open market. More importantly, you, the customer, gets more choices. So Google, through its deals with Apple and Mozilla, tried to do something similar. It tried to make Google search the default search engine, and it used its money to block any potential challengers. Basically, Google wanted to rig the market in their favor. And now it faces the prospect of being dismantled into smaller entities. That would be the harshest punishment. Of course, Google can challenge all of this in higher courts, and the US government may end up resorting to a less severe punishment. They could force Google to share more data with competitors. They could enforce measures to slow down Google. They could also make it easier for other companies to compete. Basically, the government will try to level the playing field. And this is very important. The world will be watching how this case unfolds. Also, other tech giants like Apple, they will be watching this. Apple is already facing a lawsuit over iPhones. This is about how the Apple ecosystem works. They don't allow rival apps or software to run on Apple devices.
And as outlined in our complaint, we allege that Apple has consolidated its monopoly power, not by making its own products better, but by making other products worse.
A guilty verdict against Google may have a bearing on the case against Apple too, and these cases could have a domino effect on the tech industry at large, especially the big players like Meta, the parent company of Facebook, and Microsoft and Amazon. Global regulators are challenging these companies. They want these companies to be broken up because they're too powerful. The case against Google could set the precedent. They need to move forward.
Finalizing a deal for an immediate ceasefire with hostage release in Gaza.
We'll see what Iran does. We'll see what happens.
It's the same old story in West Asia. The US asks Israel to de-escalate, then follows it up with a massive arms shipment. The latest one is worth $20 billion. We're talking about lethal weapons here. 50 F-15 fighter jets, advanced air-to-air missiles, 120mm tank ammunition and explosive mortars. It's the mother of all mixed signals. Washington keeps asking Israel to stop fighting, to sign a ceasefire with Hamas, yet they pump more and more weapons into Israel. This shipment will take time though. The deliveries will be made over many years. The first cash is expected by 2026. But look at the timing. On Tuesday, Israel bombed Deir el-Balah. It's a city in central Gaza. It was hosting hundreds of Palestinian refugees. Just look at the destruction. Children covered in blood, babies killed in their sleep, that too when the world marked 75 years of the Geneva Convention, a convention that upholds humanity during war. Israel is not just ignoring those rules, it is tearing them up for the rest of the world to see. More than 40,000 Gazans have been killed since October. That's almost 130 deaths per day. The numbers alone will make you angry, but look at the stories behind them. I'll tell you about an incident from yesterday. A Gazan father had gone out to get birth certificates for his twins. The babies were born just 4 days ago. So the babies and their mother stayed back. The father went out to get the birth certificates. In that time, their building was bombed by Israel. When the father returned, everyone was dead. His wife, his mother-in-law, and his 4-day-old twins.
I went to get the birth certificates. I got 2 babies, twins. I got a call telling me that the house you are staying in got bombed. People from the neighborhood called me. My wife is gone, with my 2 babies and my mother-in-law.
Why is Israel continuing this? Almost every country wants them to stop. Families of hostages want them to stop. So why isn't Benjamin Netanyahu listening? Because he doesn't have to. You see, only one country's opinion truly matters to Israel, and that country is the United States of America. Joe Biden may criticize Netanyahu all he wants, but he's still sending weapons. For all the so-called outrage, guess how many weapons Biden has withheld? 1 shipment, that's it. Same with regional tensions. Israel has attacked Iran, Lebanon, and Syria. What gives them this confidence? Again, the United States of America. Biden has moved more firepower into West Asia. He's also promised to defend Israel if attacked. So why should Netanyahu be scared? The truth is, Biden does not have any real red lines. Not civilians, not Rafah, not even 4-day-old babies. Which is why Israel's war rolls on. You may have seen the missiles and tank ammunitions being fired. A lot of that comes from the US. Let's look at the numbers now. The US Congress has approved a military package for Israel. That's worth $17 billion. In addition, there are smaller sales. You see, packages have a certain amount above a certain amount must be submitted to Congress. Anything below that amount skirts under the radar. And that's what Biden is doing. Reports say that he has approved more than 100 small sales since October 7th. These could be between $25 and $300 million. And what sort of weapons are these? Artillery shells, howitzers, tank ammunition, guided bombs, Hellfire missiles and rockets. We are talking thousands of these items. Now, Israel says these weapons are only used in self-defense, but ground reports suggest otherwise. In the month of June, Israel bombed a refugee camp in central Gaza. Analysis showed that the bomb was American-made. And we are not military experts here, but bombing refugees is not self-defense. Yet there is no criticism from the United States. And the same America wants Israel to cease fire.
The United States' overall goal remains to turn the temperature down in the region, deter and defend against any future attacks, and avoid regional conflict. That starts with finalizing a deal for an immediate ceasefire with hostage release in Gaza. We need to get this over the finish line.
The US wants Israel to cease fire, but they're not willing to apply pressure. Forget pressure, they can't even stop sending weapons, and nobody is supposed to question any of this. Consider what happened at a recent Kamala Harris rally. A few protesters managed to sneak in. They accused her of supporting Israel's war in Gaza. Listen to the response.
He intends to end the Affordable Care Act. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
The same Harris will also talk about protecting civilians, about signing a ceasefire deal. But if you expose their hypocrisy, you are a Trump supporter. We don't know when this war will end or how it will end. But when the history books are written, it should make one thing clear. Hamas started this war, but it wasn't just Israel that killed 40,000 Palestinians. It was Israel and the United States. Ukraine's incursion in Russia is gaining momentum. The operation entered its 11th day today. Ukrainian forces are building on their gains. Kiev claims it now has a military office inside Russian territory. Listen in.
To maintain law and order and ensure the priority needs of the population, a military commandant's office was created in the controlled territories of Kursk region. Major General Moskalyov was appointed the head.
This is the area that they're talking about, the Kursk region. Ukrainian troops are now 35 kilometers inside the Kursk region. And how much territory does Ukraine control? More than 1,000 square kilometers. This includes 82 Russian settlements. So Ukraine is now on solid footing in Kursk. Its soldiers are expanding the operation. Their next target is Belgorod. As of yesterday, fierce fighting was still on there. Ukraine says it detained more than 100 Russian soldiers. This is their largest mass capture of Russian troops. A video too has come out. It was released by Ukraine's military. It shows the Russian troops surrendering. Russia is countering Ukraine's claims with videos of their own, like this one. Russia released these pictures from Belgorod. It is an attempt to show Ukraine in bad light, because here Moscow claims that Ukraine conducted airstrikes in the region and targeted civilians and their homes. Russia has since imposed a state of emergency in Belgorod.
The main goal of the state of emergency is to introduce additional security measures and additional support measures for those who have suffered. We hope that our plan will be implemented.
Zelensky wanted Russia to feel the war. He seems to be getting his wish. Moscow has ordered mass evacuations. Around 200,000 Russians have been moved from these regions. These were people living close to the Ukraine border. 2 lakh of them have been moved. Russia says it has managed to regain some of its lost territory, but this operation is not over yet. In fact, the fighting could intensify in the coming days. Moscow wants a swift end to Ukraine's campaign, so more Russian troops are being deployed here to flush out the Ukrainian army.
We are talking, first of all, about increasing the efficiency of the troop command and control system in interaction with other law enforcement agencies and the administration of the Belgorod region, about identifying responsible officials, as well as allocating additional forces and means that will be sent to carry out the main tasks.
So Russia is ready to fight this out. Is Ukraine prepared for a protracted battle inside enemy territory? Its forces appear to be stretched already. Moscow says it is making gains inside Ukraine. They've captured a key transport hub in eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, Kiev's attacks have put its Western partners in a fix, like the United States, which appears to have been taken by surprise. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has made calls to Kiev to ask what's their end game with this operation.
You know, the secretary had a call with Minister Umerov yesterday. Throughout the department, we are engaging with the Ukrainians, trying to get a better understanding of their objectives. So I don't have more for you right now.
If Ukraine wants to continue fighting inside Russia, it will need more support from the West, and that is going to be tricky. Russia is preparing for the long haul. It is stepping up production of weapons. Reports say Russian arms producers are delaying deliveries to foreign clients. They are prioritizing supplies to Russian forces. Russia's ally China is also making moves. Interestingly, it has reached out to the Vatican, or it is talking to the Vatican. The Vatican reached out. Diplomats from both sides have spoken about the war in Ukraine and China's proposed peace plan. Like I said, the Vatican is said to have requested this call. And what is the Chinese peace plan that they discussed? It calls for a ceasefire in Ukraine and a negotiated truce to end the conflict. In the past, Vladimir Putin has endorsed the Chinese plan, but Ukraine and the West have been skeptical. Ukraine does not want to give up land to end this war, so Zelensky has rejected China's compromise formula. Instead, he offered an alternative. At the Peace Summit in Switzerland, the one that was held in June, it proved to be a non-starter though, because no one from Russia attended. They were not invited. So China too gave it a miss. And while India did send a delegation, it refused to endorse Ukraine's plan. The thing is, peace will require a compromise from both sides, and at this point, neither is ready for it. So they offer plans and counter plans and continue fighting. Now, Zelensky has taken the war inside Russia. Perhaps the idea is to build leverage to push his peace plan. And his forces have made some gains, but unless they can hold on to them, it won't amount to much. 200 million, that's how many iPhones are made every year, 200 million iPhones. And who makes them? A bunch of players, but one name stands out. That's Foxconn. Foxconn makes 70% of all iPhones. It's a Taiwanese tech giant. It makes more than 140 million iPhones every year. And not just that, it also makes Amazon Kindles, Google Pixel devices and Sony's PlayStation. Foxconn is the biggest manufacturer of electronics in the world. It is also one of the world's biggest employers. It employs 1.3 million people. But why are we talking about it tonight? Because the Foxconn chairman was in India this week. This man, Young Liu, he met Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The two discussed a lot of issues, including artificial intelligence, semiconductor manufacturing, and local production. Sounds like a productive meeting. And it's part of Foxconn's bigger plan. It wants to cash in on India's growing economy. It wants to expand in India. The company plans to invest $1.6 billion in new projects. Where will this money go? Who will benefit from these projects, and what's at stake for India? First, let's look at Foxconn's presence in India. They opened their first factory in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. This was in the year 2017, the first Foxconn factory in Tamil Nadu. And since then, they've only expanded. Currently, Foxconn has 30 factories in India, 30. Also 9 production campuses. It employs thousands of people. In 2022, Foxconn made $30 billion in India. That was 4.6% of its total revenue, $30 billion. This was up from nearly 2% in 2021, so more than double in 1 year. In 2023, that is last year, they started making the iPhone 15 in India. And by 2028, 25% of all phones could be made in India. That's a lot of numbers, but the trajectory is clear. Foxconn is eyeing a bigger business here. What makes India an attractive destination for the company? The first reason is the geopolitical uncertainty. China accounts for 75% of the company's production, but Foxconn wants to change that. It wants to bring it down to less than 50% at least. So they're looking for alternatives, and India is one of them. The second reason for focusing on India is familiarity. You see, Foxconn already has a comprehensive setup in India. It is familiar with this country, so it can just build on its existing facilities. According to representatives, Foxconn wants to double its business in India, so the plans are ambitious. But what does India stand to gain? Well, a lot. New Delhi aims to become a global manufacturing hub. The Prime Minister spoke about this today. India also wants to position itself as an alternative supplier to China, and Foxconn could be key to that plan. Plus, it will create more jobs. In Tamil Nadu, the company will invest $190 million. This is for a new electronics components unit. It will create more than 6,000 jobs. In Telangana, they plan to invest over $357 million. This is for an existing facility. In Karnataka, they plan to invest some $600 million. This is for 2 new factories, and this is over and above a $700 million facility near the Bengaluru airport. So a lot of money is being poured in, and India stands to gain. But it hasn't always been such a rosy relationship. In the month of June this year, Foxconn got into trouble here over a hiring bias. Apparently, the company was not hiring married women for its factories. And it's not the first time such a controversy has come to light. In 2021, there was a food poisoning outbreak in its Tamil Nadu factory. It led to a lot of protest. Plus, there were safety risks and multiple labor violations. Foxconn also pulled out of a joint venture to make semiconductors in India, so there have been issues before. But looks like both sides want to put it in the past. Right now, Foxconn is betting big on India, and New Delhi wants to leverage that. So that's the story of Adani and Hindenburg, just one stock in a market of over 5,000 listed companies on India's Bombay Stock Exchange. Most investors know this already. One company's issues won't disrupt the entire market. In China, however, it is a very different story. Overseas investors are leaving China in large numbers. Between April and June, overseas firms pulled out $15 billion, $15 billion taken out from the Chinese economy. This is a record exit. But it's hardly surprising. In the past 3 years, Chinese stocks have steadily declined as foreign investors have pulled out their money. And how much was the loss? At least $6 trillion. The steady outflow shows that China is unable to reverse the decline and restore confidence among foreign investors. They seem to have given up. And why is that? Why investors leaving China? Because they see risks, both short-term and long-term. In the short run, they are worried about the trade war between the EU and China. It is intensifying. Brussels has imposed high tariffs on Chinese EVs. It wants to restrict their imports. Made in China EVs now face up to 37% extra taxes in European nations, in EU nations, 37% extra tax. Beijing has filed a complaint against this at the WTO, the World Trade Organization. China has challenged the European tariffs. The complaint says that Europe's actions have no basis in law or fact. They're legally and factually incorrect. That's what China is saying. But here is the argument from Europe. It says, in China, EV makers get state subsidies. So it's not a level playing field because the government is helping car companies. It is helping EV makers. And this allows them to undercut their competitors. They dump cheap cars in European markets, and this hurts the local players. A few months ago, Brussels and Beijing tried to talk about this to settle their differences, but they could not. Last week, China moved the WTO. It filed a formal complaint. Now, for the investors in China, all of this is a risk, and they see this as just the beginning. Today, it's a trade war with Europe. Tomorrow, it could be China versus America. And they see it coming because both presidential contenders in the US are talking about this. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, they say they want to contain China. Both Harris and Trump want to act on it. Harris wants to invest more in American manufacturing, and Trump proposes a much more hawkish approach.
So with all the other things happening on our border, and they're being built by China to make cars and to sell them into our country, no tax, no anything. Those plants are going to be built in the United States, and our people are going to man those plants. And if they don't agree with us, we'll put a tariff of approximately 100 to 200% on each car, and they will be unsellable in the United States.
Long story short, the divide between China and the West is widening. Foreign investors don't like it. They don't want to get caught in it. They don't want to get caught in the trade war between China and the West, so they're pulling out of China. That is one reason. The second reason is the Chinese economy itself. It is showing clear signs of stress. This year, China set a growth target of 5%, a target that it's missing. The latest numbers show growth at 4.7%. Exports are underperforming too. In July, China's exports grew by 7%. The target was closer to 10%. So the fundamentals are weak. And the even bigger worry is the local governments and their debt. It is like a ticking time bomb. We've told you about this in the past. Look at what local governments in China owe. Anywhere between $7 to $11 trillion. That is their debt. And out of this debt, 7 to 11 trillion, loans worth $800 billion are at the risk of default. A lot of these loans were taken to build infrastructure projects, stuff like your industrial districts and resorts and transit systems and housing projects. Many of these projects have failed. So the local governments are falling behind on their debt repayments. This has forced Chinese officials to resort to extreme measures, like chasing private sector companies. What for? To collect unpaid taxes. More than a dozen listed companies have got notices in China. Local governments are demanding millions of dollars in back taxes, retrospective taxes, meaning these bills are based on old transactions dating back several years. They come out of nowhere. It's like you sealed a deal, say 10 years back, and now the government is telling you that there's a tax on that deal that you must pay. Needless to say, it's unfair. But this is what's happening in China. One company has been asked to pay up to $12 million. Do you know when these taxes were due? 30 years back. But they must pay $12 million now. Another company has got a bill for $92 million for taxes that were due 20 years back. This is a clear case of tax terrorism. But these local governments are so desperate, they're running short of cash. So they're looking under every rock for money. This approach is not sustainable. The Chinese economy needs reforms. Even Chinese officials agree.
Pushing forward Chinese-style modernization faces many complex conflicts and problems, and we must overcome multiple difficulties and obstructions through further comprehensive deepening of reforms, promoting better alignment between production relations and productive forces, the superstructure and economic base, state governance, and social development. This will provide powerful momentum and institutional guarantees for China to achieve modernization.
China has made similar promises before, but it has failed to deliver. Foreign investors are catching on to this reality. They have lost faith in China, and about time, we say. If one company fails, the larger market can still sustain the stock. But if a government defaults on its debt, all bets are off. No wonder investors are leaving China. Now let's look at Japan. Their Prime Minister is stepping down. It's this man, Fumio Kishida. Today he made the announcement. Kishida belongs to the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, or the LDP. In September, they will hold a contest to choose the party leader, and Kishida will not run for that.
The most obvious first step to show that the Liberal Democratic Party will change is for me to step aside. I will not run for the upcoming presidential election. I will continue to support the new leader who will be elected through the presidential election as a comrade.
So this is how it works. Kishida steps down, a new party leader is elected. He or she becomes Japan's Prime Minister, but it raises a few questions. Like, why is Kishida stepping down? Who will replace him? Why will Japan have 4 prime ministers in 4 years? What is wrong with the country's politics? Let's look at Kishida first. He is 67 years old. He belongs to a family of politicians. He served as foreign minister from 2012 to 2015. In fact, he is Japan's longest serving foreign minister. In 2021, he became prime minister. He succeeded Yoshihide Suga. He served 3 years in office, and those were tough years. There was the pandemic, 2 wars, the assassination of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and multiple scandals in Tokyo. Kishida vowed to tackle Japan's demographic crisis. He touted his new capitalism policies. None of it worked. Japan's economy suffered, its growth spluttered, the yen plummeted, and Kishida's ratings went down with it. When he took office, his rating stood at around 50%. Last month, it was down to 15.5%, the lowest for any leader in a decade. Many blamed his lack of charisma for all of this. So Kishida finally chose to resign. In theory, he could continue until 2025, but that wouldn't have helped anyone. So they'll have to find a replacement now. Who will that be? A lot of names are doing the rounds. The first is Shigeru Ishiba. He's a former defense minister, also the Secretary General of the ruling party, the LDP. Ishiba is seen as the strongest contender right now. But there are others too, like Digital Minister Taro Kono, the LDP Secretary General, Japan's Economic Security Minister, and Foreign Minister. They're also in the race. Now, if any of these 2 win, Japan will have its first female Prime Minister, the first ever. The country got its first Prime Minister in 1885. Since then, 64 men have served as PM, 64 Prime Ministers, all men. In 1955, the Liberal Democrats took control of the parliament, and since then they have pretty much ruled Japan continuously. The same party has been in power for almost 70 years now. The LDP gave Japan its longest serving prime minister. That was Shinzo Abe. He ruled from 2012 to 2020. Now, 8 years may not sound like a long period of time, but in Japanese politics it is. Most of their prime ministers last less than 3 years. Fumio Kishida was in office for 35 months. He's Japan's 8th longest serving PM, so the bar is quite low. His predecessor, Suga, was in office for a year. And that tells you a thing or two about Japanese politics. The LDP may have ruled for decades, but people don't seem to trust the party anymore. There have been multiple scandals like the siphoning of campaign funds, corruption allegations, and the party is linked to fringe groups. Plus, there's discontent over Japan's declining population. The economy, like we said, is struggling, and the debt is rising. The problem is, none of this shows at the ballot box because Japan often has a low voter turnout and the opposition is quite weak. So despite all of these issues, the LDP sails through. It keeps winning elections. This time, though, the outcome may be different. Japan's political crisis is at a precipice. The LDP lost 3 by-elections in April. The general election is due next year in 2025, so it's a moment of reckoning for the ruling party. If the LDP does not clean up its act, it could lose control over a country it has ruled for 7 decades. Before our last story tonight, let me ask you a question. When you think about life on Mars, what do you picture? Maybe airborne sleeping pods or multi-level housing towers. But what do you think about underground colonies? We ask because scientists have discovered water on Mars. It is an underground reservoir, enough to fill an ocean that covers the entire planet. That is a lot of water, and this is good news. But the problem is, this water is too deep to tap. What does this mean for human life on Mars? Is the Martian underground habitable? Here is a report.
rugged and tan. No, we aren't talking about a rom-com hero, we're describing the crust of Mars. Yes, the planet that billionaires seem to be obsessed with.
Study the interior of Mars.
But this is a good day to be a billionaire. Much like any other day, because scientists have finally done it. NASA has found water on Mars. They've discovered a reservoir of liquid water deep in the crust of the planet. Enough to make up a whole ocean. Scientists say it's enough to cover the entirety of Mars, to a depth of 1.6 kilometers. How did NASA find this water? It's all thanks to an outer space robotic explorer, the InSight lander. It touched down on Mars in 2018. It studied Martian quakes or Marquakes, as many as 1,300 of them. It studied the seismic vibrations to understand how the red planet moves. This data has revealed the presence of underground water on Mars. Now, we know what you may be thinking. Didn't we already find water on Mars? Well, we did. In 2015, NASA found liquid salt water on Mars. But this latest discovery is significant because it indicates that there's a much larger amount of water on the planet, which might make it possible for humans to inhabit it. But there is a catch here. The Martian water is playing hard to get. Why? Because it's trapped. It's trapped in tiny cracks and pores of rocks in the middle of the crust.
So the liquid water is roughly 11 to 20 kilometers beneath the subsurface, and getting that liquid water would be quite challenging. For example, on Earth, you often have to circulate fluids, whether that be liquid water or mud, to make drilling a little bit easier.
Just as on Earth, on Mars as well, humans will need drills and other equipment to use the water. They will need power capabilities on the foreign planet. So they will either have to bring such high-level technology to Mars or make the technology on the planet. Either way, this will be challenging. But in all likelihood, scientists will try, because humans need water to colonize Mars. That's the long-term priority. But for the time being, researchers have set their goals lower. Now that they've found the Martian water, they want to understand it, its contents, its purpose, and use this knowledge to find out more about the planet itself. The climate, surface and interior of Mars, and if there are habitable environments on Mars buried deep underground. And most importantly, the planet's evolution.
Mars once looked like Earth 3 billion years ago, and now it doesn't. It's dry and it's desolate. And so a big question is, where's the water? Where did it go?
Humans can only hope that the scientists answer these questions. Because do you know what's cooler than living on Mars? Living in sci-fi Martian colonies that are underground.
After 19 days, the Olympics is over. Do you know what we'll miss the most? Not the competition, not the nervous excitement. We will miss the jokes, we say. The internet has been brutal on athletes this year. One mistake and you're meme fodder. So let me introduce the latest victim. Rachel Gunn, aka B-Girl Reagan. She took part in the breakdancing competition in Paris. Most of you may know breakdancing from movies like Step Up. Well, wipe that from your memory because this is the real thing. This is Olympic level breakdancing. Reagan got a PhD on breaking culture in 2017. By 2020, she was the top ranked B-girl in Australia. So this was a performance to watch out for. If you don't believe me, see it for yourself.
Not bad, not bad. Now you.
Across continents, one powerful news source.
Bringing you diverse perspectives on the issues that matter.
We go beyond the boundaries to give you that little extra about every sporting moment.
So thank you for making Firstpost 5 million strong. We're counting on your support, and you can trust us to bring you the news unfiltered and unvarnished.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for a future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.
On the show today, the T20 World Cup Vantage will be crossed to the West Indies. What can we expect